Scarlett, calm down. I had power of attorney, it's perfectly legal. My brother Jake's voice was so casual, like he was discussing the weather. You sold my house? While I was deployed? I could barely breathe. What he didn't know was that he'd just committed a federal crime. My name is Scarlett, and I'm 26 years old. I'm a military communications specialist, and I just finished an 8-month deployment in Germany working on classified assignments. You know that feeling when you've worked your whole life for something? That house was mine. I bought it at 23 with my military benefits and every penny I'd saved from 3 years of service. My family never really understood my choices. While my brother Jake was the one they always praised, the favorite who could do no wrong, I was the one they criticized for being too serious and too independent. Every time Jake got into financial trouble, which was constantly, my parents would bail him out. But when I needed support, figure it out yourself, Scarlett. I trusted Jake to handle my mail and watch over things while I was gone. Big mistake. See, Jake had always been jealous of my success, my independence, the fact that I didn't need anyone to solve my problems. And while I was overseas serving our country, he saw his opportunity. If you've ever been the family scapegoat, the one who works twice as hard but gets half the credit, then you'll understand exactly what happened next. Maybe you know what it's like when your family treats your biggest achievement like it's just another opportunity for them. The flight from Germany to Atlanta felt endless, but I was excited to sleep in my own bed again. I'd been dreaming about walking through my front door, dropping my gear, and just being home. Instead, I stood on my own porch like a stranger, my key refusing to turn in a lock that had clearly been changed. My hands were shaking as I dialed Jake's number. "Oh hey, Scarlett. Welcome back." His voice was so cheerful, so normal. "How was the flight?" "Jake, my keys don't work. Did something happen to the house?" There was this pause, this awful telling pause. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh right, I forgot to mention. I sold it last month. Got 180 for it, not bad considering the market." The world tilted. "You sold my house? Look, you weren't using it anyway. I needed the money for my startup and you were never here. I had power of attorney, remember? It's perfectly legal." I could barely form words. "Jake, that wasn't what power of attorney was for. That was for emergencies, for paying bills." This was an emergency. My business needed capital. His tone shifted, getting defensive. "Besides, Mom and Dad think it's for the best. You're never around anyway." When I drove straight to my parents' house, still in my uniform, still carrying my deployment bag, I expected support. I expected outrage on my behalf. Instead, Mom looked me up and down and sighed. "Scarlett, don't be so dramatic. Jake is trying to build something real. You're never here anyway. I was serving our country. And Jake has a family to think about," Dad added, not even looking up from his newspaper. "Stop being so selfish." Jake waltzed in like he owned the place, grinning. "See? They get it. You'll be fine. You always land on your feet. Besides, what are you gonna do, sue your own family?" That's when it hit me. Jake had planned this. He'd waited until I was deployed, used my absence against me, and convinced my parents I was the problem. He'd stolen my house and made himself the victim. But Jake made one crucial mistake. He assumed I was the same quiet girl who used to let him walk all over me. 8 months of military training had taught me patience, strategy, and how to gather intelligence. And I was about to put every single lesson to use. Over the next week, I started digging deeper into what Jake had actually done with my money. What I found made my blood boil. The first betrayal hit when I saw his Instagram. There was Jake, posting pictures of a brand new BMW in his driveway. The caption read, "New ride for the new business venture. Dreams do come true when you work hard." The car alone cost more than half of what he'd gotten for my house. This wasn't about his struggling startup. This was about Jake wanting expensive toys. When I confronted him, he didn't even try to hide it. "So what if I bought a car? I deserved it after all the stress of handling your property situation." "My property situation? Jake, you created the situation." He just shrugged. "You'll get over it. You always do." The second betrayal came from my parents. I thought maybe if I showed them proof of Jake's spending, they'd finally see what he'd done. Instead, Mom looked at the photos and smiled. "Good for Jake. He's been working so hard on his business ideas. Maybe now you'll learn that family resources should be shared." Family resources? That was my house. Dad didn't even look up from his coffee. "Scarlett, you need to stop being so possessive. We raised you both to support each other." I couldn't believe it. They were actually proud of him for stealing from me. But the third betrayal was the worst. Jake started telling people I was mentally unstable from my military service. I found out when my cousin Sarah called me, worried. Jake said you're having some kind of breakdown about the house sale. He said military deployment messed with your head and you're not thinking clearly. Sarah, he sold my house without permission while I was overseas. Well, he said he had legal authority, and you're just confused about the paperwork. That's when I realized Jake's real strategy. He wasn't just stealing my house. He was destroying my credibility so no one would believe me when I fought back. When I tried to visit the people who'd bought my house, hoping they might help, they were sympathetic but firm. Your brother said you'd been discharged from the military for psychological reasons. He had all the right paperwork. We're sorry, but the sale is final. Jake had lied to them too. He'd presented falsified documents claiming I'd been discharged and couldn't handle my own affairs. The final straw came when Jake's girlfriend Rebecca cornered me at the grocery store. You know what your problem is, Scarlett? You're jealous. Jake is actually doing something with his life while you're just playing soldier. Playing soldier? I kept my voice calm, but inside I was calculating. Military training had taught me to stay cool under pressure, to think strategically when people tried to provoke me. That night, I made a decision. If Jake wanted to play games, I'd play games, but I'd play by rules he didn't even know existed. I started keeping detailed records of every conversation, every lie, every admission. Jake thought he was so smart, but he was about to learn that underestimating a trained soldier is a very dangerous mistake. Here's the thing, my family didn't know about me. Before I left for deployment, I'd gotten suspicious about Jake's sudden interest in helping me with my affairs. Call it intuition, or maybe just experience dealing with his schemes over the years. So I'd done something Jake never expected. I'd recorded our conversations about the power of attorney. Not just the official signing, but the casual talks where he joked about how much my house was worth, and how wasted it was sitting empty. What they didn't know was that military communications training teaches you to document everything. We learn to keep detailed records, to anticipate problems, to have backup plans for our backup plans. Old habits die hard. I had copies of every single document I'd signed, stored both digitally and physically. I had detailed photos of my house's condition before I left. I had records of every payment I'd made, every improvement, every penny that went into that property. But more importantly, I'd made a friend they didn't know about. Someone who understood exactly what Jake had done and why it was so much worse than just stealing from family. See, when you mess with military property, when you forge documents related to deployed service members, you're not just breaking family trust, you're breaking federal law. What they didn't know was that I'd already started building my case. Every lie Jake told, every document he'd falsified, every story he'd spread about my mental state, it was all evidence. Jake thought he was so clever, manipulating everyone while I was overseas. He had no idea that he'd actually handed me everything I needed to destroy him. They thought I was just the quiet military girl who'd roll over and take it. They were about to find out exactly how wrong they were. 3 days after my grocery store encounter with Rebecca, my phone rang from an unknown number. Miss Thompson, this is Robert Patterson. I was your grandparents' attorney, and I've been the family lawyer for about 20 years. My heart started racing. Mr. Patterson, is everything okay? Well, that's what I'm calling to find out. Your brother Jake came to see me a few weeks ago, asking about some property issues involving you. The story he told me didn't add up. I could barely breathe. What kind of story? He said you'd been having financial troubles and had asked him to handle the sale of your house. But Jake's never been good at keeping his stories straight, and when I asked for your signature on the documents, he got very nervous. This was it. This was the break I needed. Mr. Patterson, Jake sold my house while I was deployed overseas. He forged documents and told the buyers I'd been discharged for psychological reasons. There was a long pause. Miss Thompson, are you telling me your brother sold military property without proper authorization? Yes, sir. That's a federal crime. We need to meet. While I was planning my next move with Mr. Patterson, my family was getting more arrogant by the day. Jake had started posting about his real estate success on social media, bragging about his business instincts and how he was thinking outside the box. Mom called me that weekend. Scarlett, your father and I want you to come to dinner Sunday. We're celebrating Jake's business launch. You're celebrating him stealing my house? We're celebrating family supporting each other. It's time you stopped being bitter and learned to be happy for your brother's success. At that dinner, Jake was insufferable. He'd used my house money to buy not just the BMW but new furniture, expensive clothes, even a Rolex. See, Scarlett? This is what happens when you actually take risks instead of just following orders. I smiled and nodded, playing the defeated sister. Inside, I was counting down the days until Mr. Patterson and I could execute our plan. Jake thought he'd won. He had no idea that his victory celebration was about to become his destruction. This is where everything I'd been planning finally came together. What would you have done if your own family celebrated stealing your biggest achievement? 2 weeks later, I called Jake with the performance of my life. Jake, I've been thinking, maybe you're right, maybe I should just accept what happened and move on. Really? Wow, Scarlett. That's very mature of you. Yeah, I want to make peace with the family. Could we meet at Mr. Patterson's office tomorrow? I want to sign something official so there's no more confusion about the house situation. Jake practically purred through the phone. That sounds perfect. I'll bring Mom and Dad so we can all witness your signature. The next afternoon, my entire family walked into Mr. Patterson's conference room looking smug and satisfied. Jake was wearing his new Rolex, Mom had a designer purse I'd never seen before, and Dad looked proud of his favorite son. Thank you all for coming, Mr. Patterson said, his voice formal and cold. We have some important documents to review. Jake settled into his chair like he owned the place. Just show Scarlett where to sign so we can put this whole thing behind us. Mr. Patterson opened a thick folder. Actually, Jake, we need to discuss what you signed. Specifically, these military discharge documents you presented to the home buyers. Jake's smile flickered. What about them? They're forgeries. Miss Thompson was never discharged. She completed her deployment and returned with full honors. The room went dead silent. I don't understand, Mom said slowly. Mr. Patterson pulled out more papers. Jake also violated the Service Members Civil Relief Act by selling deployed military personnel's property without proper authorization. This isn't a family dispute. This is federal fraud. Jake's face went white. I didn't know that was illegal. She wasn't even using the house. Ignorance doesn't excuse forging military documents, Jake. The penalties include up to 5 years in federal prison plus full restitution. Dad finally spoke up. This has to be a mistake. No mistake, I said, finally breaking my silence. I have recordings of Jake planning the whole thing, including the conversation where he admitted to forging the documents. I pressed play on my phone. Jake's voice filled the room. She'll never know until she gets back, and by then it'll be too late. I'll just tell everyone she had a breakdown from military service. Jake shot up from his chair. You recorded me? That's illegal. Mr. Patterson smiled grimly. Actually, in this state, one-party consent makes those recordings perfectly legal evidence. Mom looked at Jake in horror. You lied to us. You said Scarlett agreed to this. How could you do this to your own brother? Dad demanded. But now he was looking at Jake, not me. I didn't do anything, I said calmly. Jake did this when he decided my military service meant nothing. Jake had 30 days to reverse the house sale, or face federal charges. The buyers were surprisingly understanding when they learned they'd been defrauded. They got their money back plus damages that Jake had to pay from his own pocket. My house came back to me along with $50,000 in legal damages that Jake now owed me in monthly payments for the next 10 years. His precious BMW got repossessed to help cover the initial costs. The Rolex, the designer furniture, all of it had to be sold. His startup never happened. Between lawyer fees and restitution payments, Jake couldn't afford to breathe, let alone start a business. Mom and Dad finally apologized, but it was too little, too late. They'd shown me exactly where I stood in this family, and I'd never forget it. We didn't know he was lying to us, Mom said tearfully. You didn't want to know, I replied. You wanted to believe I was the problem because it was easier. The family dynamic shifted permanently. They could never dismiss me again, never treat me like the expendable child who should just be grateful for scraps. I moved back into my house with new locks, new boundaries, and a new understanding of my own worth. They thought my military service made me weak and obedient. Instead, it had made me absolutely unstoppable. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who hurt you most. But here's what I learned. Every challenge you survive makes you stronger than they think you are. Every skill you develop becomes a weapon they never see coming. If this story hit close to home, drop a comment and let me know. And remember, never let anyone convince you that your achievements don't matter. You've earned everything you've worked for.
2 more videos are waiting on your screen. Tap now to watch them. Both are amazing stories you'll enjoy.